For nearly 20 years, the Iraqi dinar has occupied a strange space in global finance. Not quite an investment, not quite a myth, but something in between. Every year, thousands of people return to the same question, quietly or publicly. Is this finally the year it happens? As 2026 approaches, that question feels louder than usual, not because something dramatic has changed overnight, but because time itself adds pressure. The longer people wait, the more meaningful the next year begins to feel. Hope grows heavier when it has been carried for decades. The dinar story has always been simple on the surface. Iraq is rich in oil. Iraq has survived war and sanctions. One day, the country stabilizes, and the currency reflects that recovery. In that vision, today's exchange rate looks temporary, almost wrong, like a spring held down too long. Supporters often point to history. Before 1991, one Iraqi dinar traded close to the US dollar. Compare that to today's rate, hovering around 1,300 dinars per dollar, and the math feels irresistible. Even a partial return sounds life-changing. That gap is what keeps the story alive. It creates the sense that something massive is being missed, that early buyers are simply waiting for the curtain to lift. Each year, new buyers arrive and see the same numbers for the first time. Every development inside Iraq becomes fuel, a new oil agreement, a banking reform, a statement from the central bank. These moments are examined, slowed down, replayed, and framed as signals. Not proof, but signs, enough to keep the belief moving forward. But belief and economics do not follow the same rules. The reality begins with scale. Iraq has an enormous amount of currency in circulation, estimated in the tens of trillions of dinars. Currency value is not just about resources, it's about how much money exists relative to what the economy produces. If the dinar were suddenly valued anywhere near the US dollar, Iraq's total money supply would instantly exceed the size of the world's largest economies. Not gradually, instantly. That kind of shift would not create wealth, it would create shock. Currencies are not reset like price tags. They reflect productivity, exports, reserves, inflation control, and trust in institutions. Iraq has made progress, but it still struggles with corruption, political division, and heavy reliance on oil revenue. A sharp revaluation would make Iraqi goods more expensive overnight. Exports would suffer, local businesses would struggle. Wages would not magically rise to match the new prices. For everyday Iraqis, it would likely feel less like a reward and more like disruption. This is why economists consistently push back on the revaluation idea, not because they dislike hope, but because the mechanism does not exist for a sudden, massive jump without consequences. The Central Bank of Iraq has said this repeatedly. There is no plan for a dramatic overnight revaluation. These statements are often dismissed by believers as intentional misdirection, but central banks tend to be boring on purpose. Stability is their job. So, why does the story keep restarting every year? Part of the answer is the information cycle. New viewers find videos that are years old but feel current. Old claims are repackaged with new dates. Language changes, but the core promise stays the same. Another part is psychological. Once someone has waited 5 years, waiting a sixth feels easier than accepting loss. Once money is spent, walking away feels worse than holding on. The longer the wait, the harder it becomes to step back. Online communities reinforce this. Doubt is often framed as betrayal. Skepticism becomes negativity. Confidence grows not from evidence, but from repetition. For some, this has real consequences. People have held dinars for decades, passing up other opportunities. Some bought at heavy markups, others built their financial plans around a future event that never arrived. Regulators and consumer protection groups have warned about this for years. Some dealers have faced legal action. Still, the narrative survives because it speaks to something deeply human, the desire for a shortcut, a correction, a moment where patience is rewarded all at once. So, what about 2026? Could something change? In theory, Yes, Iraq could continue gradual reforms. Its currency could strengthen slowly over time. Financial systems could integrate further with global markets. These are real possibilities, but that is very different from a sudden windfall. A slow adjustment does not create overnight millionaires. It rewards long-term economic growth, not speculation, and that distinction matters. For most holders, 2026 will likely resemble previous years. New dates, new explanations, familiar disappointment, and for true believers, new reasons why the next year will be different. The Iraqi dinar story is less about currency and more about expectation. It shows how hope can outlast evidence, and how time can strengthen belief instead of weakening it. As 2026 approaches, the question may not be whether the dinar changes, but whether expectations ever will. Because currencies move on fundamentals, not timelines, and hope alone has never set an exchange rate. The dream continues, not because the math changed, but because letting go is harder than waiting.